This slideshow is aimed at parents and guardians who are unable to attend the briefings for the Year 4 March residential, which would normally take place on Monday the 7th of February and Tuesday the 8th of February. First of all, a quick overview of Thursday the 24th of March, when we'll be visiting Hadrian's Wall, a very famous stretch of the wall near the Wind Sill, which links with the girls' learning in this term's set text, which is called Across the Roman Wall by Teresa Breslin. The book deals with human trafficking across Hadrian's Wall in the times towards the end of Roman rule in Britain. Our first educational stop on this visit will be Housted's Roman Fort on the Thursday lunchtime. This site is managed jointly by National Trust and English Heritage. It's where we will have our school-packed lunches, and it'll be a chance to explore the most complete Roman fort in Britain, which actually overlooks and forms part of Hadrian's Wall. Housted is considered by many experts to be the best place to see a lot of the original features of a Roman fort, such as barrack blocks, hospital, commander's house, and so on. It is very, very well curated and will be a smashing spot to have lunch. At Housted's, the girls will be working in small groups with a teacher supervising them, and they'll be able to explore the fort themselves, looking at the interpretation boards and trying to work out from the archaeological remains, the primary evidence, exactly what went on in different parts of the fort. They'll be able to explore the remains up close, to examine things which they've only so far been able to look at in books and on video. So, for example, Roman hypocaust or underfloor heating systems, or floors which were raised in order to keep grain supplies dry for the troops. They'll be able to see how the fort occupied a raised position overlooking the surrounding countryside. So overall, a great opportunity for them to have some fresh air, their lunch al fresco, after a long journey north. From our lunch stop at Housted's, we'll make a very short journey of about just 3 miles down the Roman road to Steel Rig. Steel Rig is the starting point for many people's walks along Hadrian's Wall. It's managed by the National Park, and this stretch of the walk which we're going to do is graded by the National Parks as suitable for families. From Steel Rig, we will be able to walk along the wall for 2 miles approximately, and this outdoor learning element of our residential visit will be led by Miss Whitehead, who supervises the girls' outdoor learning at school. From a geography point of view, it'll be a chance to see the landscape on which Hadrian's Wall had to be built, quite a challenge, including an ancient volcanic outcrop, a magma outflow called the Wind Sill. And so Mr. Elkington will be taking a lead on that. He's our geography expert, and there should be an opportunity for the girls to do some small amounts of rock sampling. Whilst we're there, we will also be visiting Mile Castle 39. Mile Castle 39 is one of the small forts which were spaced along Hadrian's Wall and allowed people through, in a controlled way, through from Britannia into the Celtic lands that lay beyond. It is a feature of the book that we're studying. The characters in the book across the Roman Wall are smuggled through a mile castle. So it's helping the girls to imagine the events of the book which they are working on in class. As you can see from this snapshot of information from the Northumberland National Park, we are walking along an approved route along a national trail which is suitable for schools. That said, we can't guarantee the weather, and we need to be prepared for steep inclines and descents coming down, and some uneven surfaces. And there will be other people obviously using the footpaths whom we need to make way for. So please follow the instructions on footwear very, very carefully. for this residential. We need to make sure that the girls are wearing shoes that are safe and appropriate for this kind of walking in the countryside. This photo shows girls from year 4 a couple of years ago, the last chance that we had before the pandemic to go on this particular residential. Similarly, this photo is of the same cohort of girls 2 years ago, and you can see that they are ready for the challenge. This is just before they headed uphill. That's the steepest section of the wall which we will endeavour to climb. As you can see, we walk in single file with the girls spaced sensibly, and there are lots of opportunities to stop and take in the views. Such as this rather amazing panorama of the windsill with the wall stretching up and over and looking towards Cragloch. And this view from the highest point in our walk, which is directly above Mile Castle 39. Which, as I mentioned previously, is one of the key episodes in the book which we are studying. People being trafficked through Hadrian's Wall with the knowledge of the Roman soldiers who accept bribes. The Thursday will be a very, very busy, packed day. From Steel Rig, once we've done our walk along Hadrian's Wall, we'll make our final little stop, which is a little bit along the Roman road, about 5 or 6 miles further. And at that point, there will be a chance for the girls to relax at the Roman Army Museum. If we're cold or damp, this is going to be the place to dry out and go to the loo. And there will be a 3D film for the girls to watch at the Roman Army Museum, curated by historians at Roman Vindolanda. Lots of replica and original artifacts for them to see. And the day finishes with a very short Latin lesson with a holographic Latin teacher. As you can see, the displays at the Roman Army Museum are very imaginative. There are opportunities for the girls to find out about everyday life for the troops that guarded Hadrian's Wall around Vindolanda and how they moved their supplies around. Chances for them to see some of the rather vicious looking weapons that the Romans used, which we've only learnt about in theory in class. And as I mentioned briefly earlier on, a final chance to sit down in the warmth of a little classroom there with the holographic teacher to learn a few words of Latin. After our short visit to the Roman Army Museum, we will then retire to the Youth Hostel Association at the Sill, which is our stop for the overnight element of the residential. It's just 5 miles back along the Roman road. The Sill is the most amazing building. It was only put up about 4 or 5 years ago, and it's co-managed by the Northumberland National Park and the Youth Hostel Association. It's the views from the rooftop garden are absolutely amazing, and the accommodation is very, very good. Access to the part of the building which we will be sleeping in will be secure. We will occupy our own corridor, staff and children. Our coach driver will be on a separate floor. This picture shows a typical dormitory. As you can see, duvets and sheets are provided by the Youth Hostel Association. The girls have to bring their own towels, however. All of the rooms have at least their own wash hand basin, and most of the dormitories are en suite. For the small number of dormitories which are not en suite, the bathrooms are literally straight across the corridor from the girls' bedrooms in our own secure corridor. The dining room is shared with other people who are staying at the Youth Hostel Association, but we will have our own designated area and sitting time. The menus are usually very simple, as you would expect in a youth hostel. They will have the staples such as pizza, chips, all the foods which we know that the girls love to have when they're not supervised by their parents. There is always a salad on offer, and there are other simple options such as jacket potatoes. The menu will be available nearer to the time. The second day of our residential is the day when we visit Roman Vindolanda itself, after breakfast at the youth hostel and after they issue with us with our packed lunches for the day. Around about 9 o'clock in the morning, our coach, which will have stayed with us overnight, will take us the final leg, which is only, I think, 1.5 miles to Vindolanda itself. It's just around the corner from the youth hostel. For those of you who haven't heard of Vindolanda, it is one of the most fascinating sites in the Roman world. We're certainly very lucky to have it in our country. It does provide a very good snapshot of Roman military life, as well as the everyday lives of the people who lived and worked around a fort such as Vindolanda. It's a constantly working dig. We will be arriving the day before the new digging season starts, so we'll be able to see last year's dig and the preparations for the new digs this year. I will lead the tour of the site, and then we'll split into smaller groups for the museum visit, and we'll have lunch at Vindolanda before departing. This aerial view shows in the foreground the vicus or village which would have grown up around the fort for people who provided services to the soldiers in the garrison. So that would have had shops. One of the shops which we will look at is the butcher's shop, and it would have had things like the bathhouse and the temple. The road runs straight through the village and then goes into the fort, which you can see as the large rectangle on the upper side of the photograph with its barrack blocks. And this artist's impression again gives you an idea of what the fort would have looked like when it was occupied roughly 2,000 years ago. It's a very open site. The girls will be allowed to explore amongst the ruins. And they'll be able to distinguish between the parts of the fort which have been discovered and renovated and the parts of the fort which are still being uncovered. Vindolanda is especially known for the number of artifacts which have been retrieved from beneath the surface of the soil, which are made from organic materials such as wood or leather. Normally, these artifacts would not be preserved, but the nature of the soil at Vindolanda, roughly 2 meters down, is that it is anaerobic. There is very little or no oxygen in the soil, and that means that things like shoes have been preserved. And children are sometimes invited to handle the artifacts. They have such a rich resource of artifacts that they can actually lend them out for handling. I believe that this is one of only a couple of examples that survive today. This is a 2,000-year-old lavatory seat, which was discovered about 4 years ago and has now been preserved at Vindolanda. The richness of the collection of artifacts at Vindolanda is quite astounding. On the top row here, you can see an example of Samian ware, which is a particular type of pottery that the Romans imported from elsewhere in their empire. They have huge whole dinner services and whatnot. On the right, you can see a glass bracelet, which, if you look very carefully, you can see it's broken into 2 or 3 pieces. One of the areas of greatest interest for the archaeologists at Vindolanda have been the various rubbish tips which they have unearthed. The Romans dumped their rubbish in different places, so you might have had one tip that functioned for 3 or 4 years and then they moved to a new tip elsewhere. This particular glass bracelet, which was hand painted with pictures of gladiators, they found one piece in one rubbish tip, and then a few years later they found the matching piece of the broken bracelet thrown into a different rubbish pit. At the bottom we have a wig from Roman times made from moss, and most importantly, and this is what has caused some of the Vindolanda collection to go into the British Museum, we have the Vindolanda tablets. We have handwritten messages which have been preserved in the anaerobic soil from other parts of the empire to the soldiers. So we have messages from mothers sending socks to their sons on the front at Hadrian's Wall and sending greetings from Rome. And these have all been preserved at Vindolanda, and we'll be able to see them and read some of them. So that's the overview of what we're going to be doing for the 2 days when we are away. The travel arrangements, well, travel is via Tiger Coaches, which is one of our school-approved suppliers. We're going to go straight up the M1 and then the A1M and the A69. There will be one stopover on the way up at Wetherby Services and coming back. The coach does have its own onboard loo. It is a long journey, so we always make sure we book something that has a toilet. For the outbound trip, we've asked if the girls can bring a non-sticky snack with them, please, and a drink for the stopover in disposable wrappers, so that we don't have snack boxes which we need to worry about washing and so on and so forth. Here is the projected itinerary for the Thursday and the Friday. We do apologise for the very early departure, but we do need to make sure that we are on the road at a good time and that we can get the most out of the first day. In the event that you arrive late, I do need to warn you that the trip will depart on time. Obviously, you then need to get creative and you might make an attempt to try and catch up with us at Wetherby Services, but please take note of the times. In their overnight bag, these are the items that the girls need to pack, including, as you can see in bold here, a snack for Friday morning. These are the uniform requirements for the Thursday when they depart school. School coat with school hat, school scarf and gloves. Their new outdoor learning hoodie with at least one layer underneath, please. And you can see here, that's our advice on what they need to have on their feet. A choice of warm trousers or jeans is fine. And I'll talk to you in a moment about waterproof trousers. So I've spoken to you about the girls' overnight bag. This is what needs to go into their school backpack, please. Water bottle, a morning snack, no sweets, please. If your child uses an inhaler, that's the place where it needs to go. Please put a pair of waterproof trousers into her small backpack, because your daughter will not have a chance to get into her overnight bag when we arrive on the Thursday. And if the weather is inclement, she'll need to be able to put those on top of her normal trousers. Like all good package tours, we have a baggage allowance, and this is what we would like the girls to bring, please. One small or medium wheelie case or holdall for the overnight. Their school rucksack, their school backpack, which should not have so much stuff in it that they cannot fit their packed lunch in it, and one separate bag to put their wellies or dirty boots in, and their waterproof trousers if they are also dirty. Medical matters. I'm not going to read this slide to you, but I would ask please that you pause this video and read the instructions very carefully. And if you have any questions, please email me or Mrs. Eggington as soon as possible. Please help us to keep all of the staff and children safe on this trip. For COVID-19, girls need to take a lateral flow test after school on Wednesday the 23rd of March. The staff will do the same. If you have a positive result, please email Mr. Cox or Mrs. Eggington immediately. The staff attending this residential visit will be myself, Mrs. Eggington, Mr. Elkington, who, as well as being our deputy head, is also the geography lead, and Mrs. Whitehead, who supervises outdoor learning. The girls will interact with other grown-ups from time to time at the Vinderlander Trust, which also operates the Roman Army Museum. These are all employees who have been checked for their appropriateness for working with children. Packed lunch and a packed tea will be provided by school on the Thursday. It's going to be a long day, so we will make sure that they are well fed. Dinner on the Thursday evening will be provided by the Youth Hostel Association. If they want us to pre-order, we will let you know in good time at the same time when you order your daughter's packed lunch. If you have any specific dietary requirements, and by that we're talking about allergies and religious observance, not preferences, then you can stipulate those to us by email. Before the residential, we would ask that you double check that your daughter is able to tie and untie her laces properly, and that she is able to do this without the need for a double knot. She should be able to repack her own luggage after you have packed it with her, and everything needs to be labelled, and she also needs to be able to shower and dress independently. I would also add that if your daughter has never before stayed away from home, and this is perfectly possible because of what's happened over the last couple of years, then perhaps half term would be a good opportunity for her to have a sleepover with one or two of her friends, just to get used to the idea of waking up somewhere where your parents aren't. Here are our emergency contact details. We cannot guarantee that to be able to reply to emails, but we will endeavour to keep you up to date with what's going on the residential by tweeting whenever we have reception. Thank you for taking the time to watch and listen. And as I've mentioned a couple of times previously in this slideshow, please do email us or speak to us at Handshake if you have any questions.